This is our past, gentlemen. This is where we have been. This is how we got here. This is who we are today.
You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, one half a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us.
It's not about that scoreboard out there. It's not about winning. It's about you and your relationship to yourself and your family and your friends.
They're strong, fast, and undefeated. So far. But I want you to remember where God has brought us. I want you to remember how hard you've worked. We weren't supposed to have a winning season, but we do. We weren't supposed to advance through the playoffs, but we did. We're not supposed to be here, but we are. So if there's anything in you that says this is a losing effort, throw it out. Because as I stand here, I believe that as long as we honor God, nothing is impossible.
Welcome back to Diggin Deeper, everyone. I'm your host, Brian Parsons, and I'm fired up that you've joined us for another edition of Diggin Deeper into the NFL. Here at our ministry, we proudly blend our faith with our passion for the game. As a Christian ministry, our foundation is firmly rooted in Christ. But that doesn't mean we shy away from breaking down the grit, grind, and glory of competition, especially in the National Football League. The reminder is always the same. Football is a passion, not our purpose. With that mindset, let's get in the huddle and dig deeper into the NFL. Week 17 delivered exactly what late-season football is supposed to bring: urgency, intensity, and zero margin for error. This is the time of year when playoff hopes are either kept alive or crushed, when coaches empty the playbook, quarterbacks are tested under pressure, and every snap feels like it carries postseason weight. From clutch 2-minute drills and defensive stands on 3rd and long, to game-changing turnovers, goal line battles, and statement wins, this week gave us plenty of separate the contenders from the pretenders moments. On today's program, we'll break down the X's and O's, evaluate execution in key matchups, and take a closer look at why some teams rose to the occasion while others came up short. We'll also highlight the pivotal plays and performances that could ultimately reshape the playoff picture as the regular season races toward the finish line. Week 17 kicked off on Christmas Day, Thursday, December 25th, a special day that carries meaning far beyond the gridiron. As we celebrate the birth of our Lord and Savior, we also gather with family, share meals, and enjoy the gift of football. It's a reminder that even in the middle of a playoff push and primetime matchups, our greatest hope and joy don't come from the scoreboard, but from Him. On Christmas Day, in the first game of the triple-header, the Dallas Cowboys traveled to take on the Washington Commanders. While there was no playoff narrative surrounding the game, this game was still played with intensity. Not just because the players are paid to do so, but this matchup is a spirited NFC East clash. The Cowboys earned a hard-fought win over the Commanders by taking control early and managing the game with precision. Dallas held the ball for more than 38 minutes, creating rhythm and keeping the Commanders' offense off the field, while Washington's time of possession barely exceeded 21 minutes. The Cowboys' offense racked up well over 400 yards of total offense, 480 total yards, led by a balanced attack that featured both a potent aerial game and a punishing ground presence. Quarterback Dak Prescott orchestrated the passing attack, completing a substantial number of attempts for 307 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a connection with Kevontae Turpin on a historic deep touchdown that electrified the crowd. Dallas also gashed Washington's defense on the ground led, but Malik Davis, who churned up a career-high 103 yards on the ground with a touchdown. Washington's offense showed resilience, led by veteran quarterback Josh Johnson, who stepped in amid injuries to his top 2 signal callers and completed 15 of 23 passes for 198 yards, though he did not find the end zone through the air. Running back Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt provided a spark with a pair of explosive touchdown runs, keeping the Commanders within striking distance and inspiring multiple second-half rallies. The Commanders' defense generated pressure, recording 6 sacks, but could not consistently get off the field on key downs, allowing Dallas to convert critical 4th downs and extend drives. Big plays, including the Cowboys, long scoring pass, and Washington's long touchdown runs punctuated the contest. But Dallas' ability to sustain drives, convert in clutch situations, and control the clock ultimately made the difference. The Commanders' late rallies cut into the lead, but they were unable to complete the comeback, falling just short in a spirited Christmas Day battle. Ultimately, this game reinforced why Cowboy fans had such high hopes for their team, as they are able to score a lot of points in the air and on the ground. Dallas' ability to control the clock and execute in critical situations highlighted the value of a disciplined, complementary offense that mixes big play passing with steady rushing. Prescott's leadership and the explosiveness of Turpin, combined with a grinding ground game, kept the Commanders on their heels for much of the afternoon. Washington showed flashes of life, particularly on Krosky Merritt's long touchdown runs, but injuries at key positions and limited opportunities on offense prevented them from mounting a full comeback. This matchup underscored the importance of ball control, third down conversions, and finishing drives, all of which Dallas executed more efficiently, leaving the Cowboys with a well-earned Christmas Day victory and the Commanders reflecting on missed opportunities. In a surprisingly physical Christmas Day matchup, the Minnesota Vikings upended the Detroit Lions behind a swarming defense and clutch big plays, pulling out a convincing win despite being outgained in total yardage and possession. Detroit chewed up more than 30 minutes of clock and posted more than 200 yards of offense, but Minnesota pounded out more than 150 yards on the ground with tough, efficient rushing that kept chains moving when it mattered most and helped sustain critical drives. On the other side, Detroit's passing game produced significantly more yardage through the air, but costly errors and turnovers repeatedly stalled promising sequences and shifted momentum. The quarterback matchup was shaped by adversity for both teams. Minnesota turned to undrafted rookie Max Brosmer under center, who completed a handful of passes for just over 50 yards, while enduring relentless pressure from the Lions and taking several sacks as his protection broke down. Detroit's veteran Jared Goff, meanwhile, passed for nearly 200 yards with one scoring strike, but was harried throughout and lost multiple fumbles that proved pivotal. Goff threw 2 interceptions and lost 3 fumbles, and star running back Jahmyr Gibbs lost another fumble. Big plays defined this game, most notably a dramatic 65-yard touchdown sprint by Jordan Addison late in the fourth quarter that put the game out of reach after the Vikings' defense had already forced multiple turnovers. Detroit finished with 231 total yards and controlled the clock for 32 minutes and 30 seconds, compared with the Vikings' 161 total yards and 27 minutes and 30 seconds of possession. The Lions' offense was more productive through the air, generating 163 passing yards, while Minnesota's passing game was nearly non-existent. On the ground, however, the Vikings outperformed Detroit by rushing for 158 yards, showing a strong ground attack that helped flip field position and sustain crucial drives late in the game. Detroit's rushing yardage was limited to 68 yards on the ground, despite enjoying a larger share of clock time and more plays overall. Minnesota's defense forced 6 turnovers that swung momentum and turned possessions into points, making up for their statistical disadvantage in yardage and possession. Turnovers and defensive dominance were the story of the afternoon, as Minnesota forced 6 Detroit giveaways, turned several of them into points, and consistently flipped field position in their favor. The Vikings also cashed in with multiple long field goals as their kicker connected from distance to keep the home crowd energized, while disciplined, aggressive tackling and pressure on the quarterback kept the Lions on their heels. Detroit's inability to protect the ball and finish drives ultimately outweighed its advantage in time of possession and yardage, and Minnesota's opportunistic playmaking, particularly on defense, carried the day in this Christmas Day contest. This game highlighted the old adage that yardage and possession do not guarantee victory. Minnesota's opportunistic defense, timely big plays, and ability to capitalize on Detroit's mistakes proved decisive. The Vikings' control of field position and situational execution allowed them to overcome a statistical disadvantage and secure a win that demonstrated the value of clutch defensive play and patience on offense. For Detroit, it was a tough reminder that turnovers and failure to convert key downs can negate impressive yardage and time of possession. This game officially ended the Detroit Lions' season while giving Vikings fans reason for optimism as they look toward next year. Minnesota loves to be the team to end the Lions' season, and this victory showcased the value of opportunistic defense and big plays in critical moments, but the quarterback situation remains unresolved and will be a key focus for the offseason. For the Lions, this loss illustrates how injuries can derail even the most talented and highly favored teams, tempering what had been a season filled with high expectations. With the NFC North title and a deep playoff run within reach at the start of the year, Detroit now faces a long off-season of reflection, recovery, and rebuilding. Questions about personnel, health, and leadership will dominate conversations as the team seeks to turn potential into results and figure out how to avoid a repeat of this disappointing ending. On Christmas night for the regular Thursday night football matchup, the Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs faced off in a bruising AFC West matchup. This was a typical matchup between the team as victory was in doubt from both sides, and the Denver Broncos rallied to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in a strategic, clock-controlled game, dominating almost every statistical category while pulling out a 20-13 win in hostile territory. Denver asserted itself early and often by holding the ball for nearly 40 minutes, almost twice as long as Kansas City's time of possession, and grinded out just over 300 total yards of offense to the Chiefs, roughly 139 yards. The Broncos balanced their attack with a mix of ground gains and timely passes, finishing with more than 120 rushing yards and well over 170 passing yards, as quarterback Bo Nix managed the game with poise, contributing both through the air and with his legs. Nix's performance featured a crucial designed quarterback run late in the third quarter that pushed Denver ahead, and he later orchestrated the game-winning drive with a short touchdown pass to R.J. Harvey in the final minutes. Kansas City, playing without its top two quarterbacks and several offensive playmakers, turned to Chris Oladokun, who showed grit but could muster only a modest passing total and one score to his receivers, a place where veteran contributors like Travis Kelce provided effort but not enough consistent production to threaten the Broncos' lead. The Chiefs' offense struggled to sustain drives and generate explosive plays, while Denver methodically moved the chains, converting multiple third downs and keeping Kansas City's offense on the sideline. Big plays in this contest weren't flashy. They were extended, time-consuming possessions that tired out the defense and kept the scoreboard ticking for Denver. The comeback, or rather, the sustained control of the game after a tight first half, came down to Denver's ability to execute in key moments, manage the clock, and finish drives when it mattered most. Denver held the ball for nearly 40 minutes, far more than Kansas City's 20 minutes, and outgained the Chiefs by a wide margin in total offensive output, finishing with just over 300 total yards, while holding Kansas City to only about 139 yards. The Broncos balanced their attack effectively. They amassed more than 100 rushing yards on the ground, with contributions from running backs and from their quarterback, and they also generated well over 170 yards through the air. Quarterback Bo Nix was the engine of the offense, throwing for 182 yards with a touchdown through the air, and adding another score on the ground, with more than 40 rushing yards in his all-around performance. Denver's rushing core also chipped in, with R.J. Harvey gaining more than 40 rushing yards and catching the game-winning touchdown late in the fourth quarter. Even as Kansas City threatened late with a final possession inside the red zone, Denver's defense made a stand on downs to seal the win, underscoring how complementary football, good clock management combined with opportunistic scoring, earned the Broncos the holiday victory. One of the marquee matchups on the Week 17 schedule took place on the Saturday slate in Inglewood, California, as the Houston Texans squared off against the Los Angeles Chargers in a game loaded with playoff implications and contrasting styles as the regular season winds down. This was December football at its finest, when bodies are worn down, playbooks are condensed, and execution becomes the ultimate separator. For the Houston Texans, this matchup was about momentum and identity. They have leaned on disciplined defense, timely pressure up front, and consistently winning the field position battle, an approach that travels well late in the season. Houston understood that controlling the line of scrimmage, forcing third and long situations, and capitalizing on mistakes could be the difference between solidifying their playoff position or heading into Week 18 needing help. On the other sideline, the Los Angeles Chargers are built around explosive potential. When they find rhythm, they can stretch the field, win one-on-one matchups, and flip a game with a single drive. However, consistency has been the lingering question all season. In Week 17, the Chargers weren't just battling an opponent, they were battling the fine line between playing up to their talent and falling short when the moment demanded more. The first half of Texans-Chargers had the feel of a late-season chess match, with both teams fully aware of the stakes and playing with playoff-level urgency. Early on, the tone was physical and methodical. Neither side came out reckless. This was about establishing rhythm, testing protections, and seeing how each defense would respond under pressure. The Texans focused on controlling tempo, leaning on balanced play calling, and staying ahead of the chains. They emphasized ball security, quick decision-making, and situational awareness, particularly on early downs. Defensively, Houston mixed coverages effectively, kept everything in front, and forced the Chargers to earn every yard rather than surrendering explosive plays. The Chargers showed flashes of why they can be dangerous. When their offense briefly found rhythm, they moved the ball efficiently by spreading the field and creating favorable matchups. However, sustained drives were hard to come by. Penalties, pressure, and third down resistance consistently stalled momentum. And for Chargers fans, the rhythm simply never stayed in tune long enough to matter. Both defenses made their presence felt throughout the first half. Tight throwing windows, contested catches, and several possessions came down to one breakdown, or one critical stop, deciding whether points went on the board. Red zone opportunities were limited, and every snap inside scoring territory carried added weight. Despite the physical play, neither team delivered a knockout blow early. At halftime, the Texans led 14-3, striking quickly, with 2 explosive touchdown passes from C.J. Stroud, while the Chargers managed only a 27-yard field goal before the break. Through 2 quarters, Houston dominated the stat sheet, piling up 214 total yards compared to roughly 22 yards for Los Angeles, while averaging over 10 yards per play to the Chargers, 1.5 yards per play. The Texans' passing attack thrived, with Stroud connecting on deep shots for big gains in both scores, while the run game contributed enough to keep the offense balanced. The Chargers, meanwhile, were held largely in check both through the air and on the ground, and struggled to convert early opportunities into sustained drives or red zone points. Houston's defense generated steady pressure and tight coverage, forcing short gains, stalled possessions, and critical mistakes. Up to this point, it was an ugly game for Los Angeles. The opportunities were there, but they went wasted, highlighted by multiple dropped passes, including one that bounced off Oronde Gadsden's hands and resulted in an interception, and another crucial drop on third down that would have extended a drive. Even coming out after halftime, the Chargers were still making mistakes which further hurt their cause and helped the Texans continue to lead. This game did feel like it was a tale of two halves. Justin Herbert did his best to keep the Chargers close, including a long run of 28 yards for a first down on 3rd and long. It was not until late in the third quarter did the Chargers find the end zone, when Herbert found Gadsden in the end zone at the goal line for a 1-yard touchdown. This must have felt good at his early drop that led to the interception. As the third quarter ended, the score was 17-10 in favor of the Texans. But as the fourth began, and the Texans were forced to punt, even after a penalty on the Chargers for roughing the passer, it felt like momentum had shifted to the Chargers. With 6 minutes and 29 seconds left in the fourth quarter, Kaimi Fairbairn connected on a 44-yard field goal to extend the score 20-10. With 3 minutes and 37 seconds left in the fourth, Omarion Hampton would score on a 5-yard rush to make the game 20-16. Earlier in the game, kicker Cam Dicker missed a field goal that would have brought the Chargers closer at 14-6. But the kick sailed. After the touchdown, kicker again missed the extra point, leaving the score at 20-16. The Chargers defense would hold the Texans, but a penalty on third down gave the Texans a first down after the Chargers used all of their timeouts. While the Texans did win this game, it was not a pretty game for the Texans. It felt like the Chargers controlled every aspect of this game except what mattered most: execution, limiting mistakes, including penalties, and the scoreboard. This victory kept the Texans alive for the AFC South divisional title and even the top spot in the AFC. But it also eliminated the Indianapolis Colts from the playoffs. For the Texans, C.J. Stroud delivered a solid performance, completing 16 of 28 passes for 244 yards, averaging 8.7 yards per attempt, with 2 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions. He was not sacked, and his quarterback rating came in at 80.1, showing efficiency despite a couple of costly turnovers. Stroud's 2 early touchdowns proved to the difference in the game, as the Chargers were unable to pull themselves out of this hole and the 2 scores game early in the first quarter. On the other side, Justin Herbert of the Chargers completed 21 of 32 passes for 236 yards, averaging 7.4 yards per attempt, with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Herbert faced significant pressure, being sacked 5 times for a loss of 35 yards, and finished with a quarterback rating of 84.9, highlighting both his ability to produce under duress and the disruptive impact of Houston's pass rush. On the ground for the Texans, Woody Marks led the backfield with 19 carries for 71 yards, 3.7-yard average, while Jahar Jordan added 36 yards on 8 carries at 4.5 yards per attempt. Xavier Hutchinson, Jalen Noel, and Nick Chubb contributed smaller chunks, with Hutchinson picking up 8 yards on a single carry, Noel 2 yards, and Chubb 1 yard, while C.J. Stroud attempted 4 rushes without gaining yards. In total, Houston ran the ball 34 times for 118 yards, averaging 3.5 yards per carry. The Texans' receiving corps was led by Jaden Higgins, who hauled in 2 catches for 88 yards, including a 75-yard touchdown, while Nico Collins added 57 yards on 3 receptions, and Jalen Noel contributed 54 yards and a touchdown on 3 catches. Xavier Hutchinson, Dalton Schultz, Woody Marks, and Christian Kirk chipped in smaller gains, bringing Houston's total to 16 receptions for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. For the Chargers, the rushing attack was paced by quarterback Justin Herbert, who rushed 6 times for 37 yards with a long of 28 yards, while Omarion Hampton added 29 yards and a touchdown on 14 carries. Trey Harris had 7 yards on a single attempt, and Jarrett Patterson contributed 1 yard. Overall, Los Angeles totaled 22 rushes for 74 yards, averaging 3.4 yards per carry. In the passing game, Quentin Johnston led the Chargers with 5 receptions for 98 yards, while Oronde Gadsden had 32 yards and a touchdown on 3 catches, and Ladd McConkey added 31 yards on a single reception. Omarion Hampton contributed 31 yards on 8 catches, with Will Dissly, Keenan Allen, and Trey Harris adding smaller gains, giving Los Angeles a total of 21 receptions for 236 yards and 1 touchdown. Again, this was an ugly game. On paper, the scoreboard made it look competitive, and in stretches it was. But the Chargers did more to beat themselves than the Texans did to dominate. Penalties, dropped passes, and mental mistakes kept Los Angeles from gaining consistent traction, and those self-inflicted errors ultimately defined the outcome. Unfortunately for Chargers fans, this is a pattern with the franchise. Moments of high potential undermined by inconsistency. Which is why so many analysts and fans have historically been cautious about buying into the hype surrounding this team. The second game on Saturday featured the Green Bay Packers and Baltimore Ravens in Green Bay at Lambeau Field. Green Bay is still fighting for a playoff spot in the NFC, and while it looks likely they'll secure one of the final 3 seeds, their goal remains higher. The Packers are aiming to overcome the momentum the Chicago Bears have built and wrestle control of the NFC North, knowing that a division title would provide a clearer path and a potentially more favorable matchup in the postseason. Every game down the stretch matters, and Green Bay is playing with both urgency and purpose as they try to assert themselves atop the division. For the Ravens, they had to win this game if they wanted to keep any playoff hopes alive. Entering the matchup, their chances of making the postseason were already slim, and a loss would have completely eliminated them from contention, ending their season abruptly. Every snap carried added urgency, as Baltimore knew there was no room for mistakes and that their margin for error had all but disappeared. Earlier in the evening, it was reported that Lamar Jackson would be ruled out for the game, a significant setback for the Ravens' offensive plans. His absence immediately shifted the narrative, forcing Baltimore to rely on backup quarterback Tyler Huntley and place a heavier emphasis on their rushing attack. Green Bay's defense could adjust accordingly, focusing less on Jackson's dual-threat ability and more on containing the other playmakers. While the game is certainly different without the veteran quarterback, Huntley has shown the ability to run the offense effectively, and he is surrounded by talent across the offensive side of the ball, giving Baltimore a chance to stay competitive despite the setback. The same situation applies to Green Bay, as Jordan Love was ruled out, leaving backup quarterback Malik Willis to take the reins. Willis has been called upon multiple times in his career and has proven capable of stepping in and managing the offense effectively, just as he did a week ago. Although the Packers lost that game, Willis was not at fault, and his experience and poise give Green Bay confidence that the offense can continue to execute even without their starter under center. Huntley was statistically efficient, completing 16 of 20 attempts for 107 yards. He averaged 5.4 yards per throw and tossed 1 touchdown without an interception, taking just 1 sack. His quarterback rating for the game was strong, finishing at 105.6, showing steady control of the offense. Huntley did exactly what he needed to do to allow for his team to take home the victory. For Green Bay, Willis had an outstanding outing, completing 18 of 21 passes for 288 yards, while averaging an impressive 13.7 yards per attempt. He threw 1 touchdown, avoided interceptions, and despite being sacked once for a 9-yard loss, posted a high quarterback rating of 134.6. Clayton Tune also got into the action, although it was just for a few throws, completing 1 of 4 passes for 8 yards, but he threw 1 interception. While the quarterbacks were decent, it was the rushing attack that stole the show, and honestly, it had to be this way if Baltimore was going to be victorious. In the Ravens' rushing game, Derrick Henry dominated on the ground, carrying the ball 36 times for 216 yards. He averaged 6.0 yards per carry, scored 4 touchdowns, and had a longest run of 30 yards. Tyler Huntley added 8 carries for 60 yards, averaging 7.5 yards per rush, while Keaton Mitchell contributed 9 carries for 31 yards. Altogether, Baltimore rushed 53 times for 307 yards, averaging 5.8 yards per carry, with 4 total rushing touchdowns. Green Bay's rushing attack was more limited, but still productive in spots. Willis carried the ball 9 times for 60 yards, and scored 2 rushing touchdowns, averaging 6.7 yards per carry. Emmanuel Wilson added 3 carries for 16 yards, while Josh Jacobs struggled on 4 carries for just 3 yards. Clayton Tune recorded 1 carry for no gain. As a team, the Packers rushed 17 times for 79 yards, averaging 4.6 yards per attempt, with 2 touchdowns. In the Ravens' receiving game, Zay Flowers led the way with 4 receptions for 30 yards and a touchdown on 5 targets. Mark Andrews caught 4 passes for 28 yards, while Isaiah Likely added 3 catches for 27 yards. Rasheen Ali caught 2 passes for 8 yards, Rashad Bateman had 1 catch for 7 yards, and Keaton Mitchell added 2 short receptions. Several other targets, including DeAndre Hopkins and Charlie Kolar, were unable to record a catch. Overall, Baltimore totaled 16 receptions for 107 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. Green Bay's receiving core, Christian Watson, had a standout performance, with 5 catches for 113 yards and a touchdown, averaging 22.6 yards per reception. Romeo Doubs added 3 catches for 62 yards, while Jaden Reed caught 4 passes for 41 yards. Bo Melton had 1 reception for 34 yards, and several others, including Matthew Golden, Chris Brooks, Josh Weil, Emmanuel Wilson, Dontavion Wicks, and Josh Jacobs, contributed smaller gains. As a team, the Packers finished with 19 receptions for 296 yards, averaging 15.6 yards per catch, and scoring 1 receiving touchdown. Henry's dominance enabled the Ravens to score on their first 5 possessions and take a 27-14 halftime lead over Green Bay. The Ravens' rushing attack allowed the offense to control the ball for a significantly longer period of time than the Packers. Baltimore's time of possession was 40 minutes and 16 seconds. While Green Bay's was just 19 minutes and 44 seconds, the Ravens were able to soar to victory at Lambeau Field 41-24 to stay alive in the AFC North Division. But their playoff hopes rest on how the Pittsburgh Steelers perform on Sunday against a Cleveland Browns team who have nothing to lose. In a gritty AFC North clash with playoff positioning still very much alive for Pittsburgh, the Cleveland Browns stunned the Pittsburgh Steelers 13-6 at Huntington Bank Field in Week 17. Emerging as spoiler, and knocking the Steelers out of immediate control of their destiny. Neither team lit up the scoreboard, but Cleveland's defense and timely offense carried the day in a hard-fought gridiron battle. The Browns finished with 262 total yards of offense and controlled the clock for 29 minutes and 21 seconds, while the Steelers narrowly outgained them with 291 total yards and possessed the ball for 30 minutes and 39 seconds in a scrappy contest that came down to the final possessions. The quarterback matchup saw rookie Shedeur Sanders lead Cleveland efficiently, completing 17 of 23 passes for 186 yards, with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, connecting on the day's lone offensive touchdown with tight end Harold Fannin Jr., who hauled in a 28-yard scoring strike in the first quarter. Sanders' performance helped keep the Browns on schedule and prevented the Steelers from pulling away early. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh's veteran signal caller Aaron Rodgers finished 21 of 39 for 168 yards without a touchdown. The Steelers' offense struggling to find the end zone. Chris Boswell provided all of Pittsburgh's scoring, with 2 second-quarter field goals, but the Steelers were held without an offensive touchdown, as the Browns' defense tightened up in the second half. Rushing production was modest on both sides, with Steelers' Jalen Warren leading Pittsburgh on the ground with 12 carries for 64 yards, while Browns' Dylan Sampson chipped in with 27 yards rushing. In the receiving game, Steelers' tight end Pat Freiermuth was the team's top target with 3 catches for 63 yards. And Cleveland's Jerry Jeudy paced the Browns with 5 receptions for 54 yards. For Pittsburgh, the offense was hampered by the absence of their top receiving threat, DK Metcalf, who was suspended following an altercation with a fan in Detroit last week. Without Metcalf, Pittsburgh struggled to stretch the field or convert in the red zone, relying on Chris Boswell for 2 second-quarter field goals. Defensively, Cleveland stood tall, keeping the Steelers scoreless in the second half, and forcing 3 straight incompletions deep in Pittsburgh territory late in the game. Cornerback Denzel Ward's pass, defensed on the final play, sealed the victory, preserving the Browns' first AFC North win of the season. The Browns also forced multiple turnovers and key stops that kept the Steelers from sustaining momentum. With 1 week left in the regular season, the Browns earned a morale-boosting upset and snapped a 4-game skid, while the Steelers now face a crucial Week 18 showdown with the Ravens for the AFC North title. Both teams will enter the offseason with plenty of questions to answer, but on this Sunday in Cleveland, it was the underdog Browns who delivered the headline and the upset. In a critical Week 17 NFC matchup at Raymond James Stadium between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Miami Dolphins, the Sunshine Matchup, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fell to the Miami Dolphins 2017, and the loss hurts their positioning in the NFC West and is one more blow to their hopes for the NFC South title. The Buccaneers finished with 380 total yards of offense, while Miami managed 298 yards, and Tampa Bay controlled the clock with 33 minutes and 42 seconds of possession, executing sustained drives when it mattered most. The game featured a notable quarterback storyline, as the Dolphins benched Tua Tagovailoa in favor of rookie Quinn Ewers, following a difficult Monday night performance a few weeks earlier. Ewers completed 14 of 22 passes for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns, showing flashes of potential despite Miami being eliminated from playoff contention. For Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield led the offense efficiently, completing 33 of 44 passes for 346 yards and 2 touchdowns, but also threw 2 interceptions, connecting on key drives to keep the Buccaneers ahead in the tight NFC South race. The rushing attack was different. Tampa Bay's rushing attack was modest, with Bucky Irving carrying the ball 9 times for 19 yards, Baker Mayfield adding 3 carries for 16 yards, Rachaad White contributing 2 carries for 10 yards, and Sean Tucker finishing with 2 carries for 8 yards, giving the Buccaneers a combined 53 rushing yards on 16 attempts. For Miami, the ground game was more productive, led by Devon Achane, who rushed 18 times for 83 yards, while Jalen Wright added 56 yards on 5 carries, including a long of 32 yards. Rookie quarterback Quinn Ewers contributed 4 carries for 5 yards, and other ball carriers, including Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, and Greg Dulcich, accounted for minor yardage, bringing the Dolphins' team rushing total to 145 yards on 30 attempts, helping them sustain drives and control portions of the game. Tampa Bay had 2 successful red zone trips on 3 attempts, while Miami converted 1 of 3 opportunities inside the 20-yard line. Penalties proved costly for both teams, with the Buccaneers committing 5 penalties for 45 yards, and the Dolphins flagged 10 times for 77 yards, affecting momentum and field position throughout the contest. Turnovers were a major factor in the game, as Tampa Bay gave the ball away 3 times, including 1 lost fumble and 2 interceptions, while Miami avoided turnovers entirely. Neither team scored on defensive or special teams plays. In terms of ball control, Tampa Bay held the edge with 32 minutes and 6 seconds of possession, compared to Miami's 27 minutes and 54 seconds, using the clock effectively on key drives, but ultimately falling short in the tightly contested matchup. With the loss, Tampa Bay's path to the NFC South title becomes much more difficult. The Buccaneers must now hope that Carolina loses to Seattle and that Atlanta falls to the Rams on Monday night to keep their hopes alive. Next week, Tampa Bay will face the Panthers in a decisive showdown, with the division crown and playoff positioning on the line. The margin for error is slim, and the Buccaneers will need a near-perfect performance to overcome the combination of losses and tough matchups standing in their way. Why is Atlanta involved? Atlanta needs to lose on Monday Night Football against the Rams, because if they win out and finish 8-9, and the Bucs also win their final game to finish 8-9, a 3-way tie with Tampa Bay, Atlanta, and Carolina heavily favors Carolina due to divisional tiebreakers, hurting Tampa Bay's chances. In one of the most lopsided games of Week 17, the New England Patriots overwhelmed the New York Jets 42-10 at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, continuing their dominant 2025 campaign. New England outgained the Jets significantly, piling up 440 total yards to 307 for the home team, controlled the clock effectively, and scored on each of their first 6 possessions to build a commanding lead early and never looked back. The victory also marked the Patriots' perfect 8-0 road record this season, a rare accomplishment in franchise history. The quarterback matchup ultimately became a showcase for Patriots star Drake May, who was nearly flawless in his performance. May completed 19 of 21 passes for 256 yards and a career-high 5 touchdown passes before exiting in the third quarter, spreading scoring strikes to 5 different receivers, and making a strong case for MVP consideration. May's precision and decision-making were on full display, as New England built a 35-3 halftime advantage. Jets quarterback Brady Cook finished 19 of 33 for 152 yards with 1 interception, and was unable to sustain any consistent offensive rhythm against New England's defense. The Patriots' offense was balanced and explosive. Running back Tre'Von Henderson contributed 82 rushing yards, while Stephon Diggs led the receiving corps with 101 yards and a touchdown, stepping up amid injuries at the position. Ramondre Stevenson also made an impact, both as a runner and a pass catcher. For the Jets, Breece Hall provided the lone highlight, rushing for 111 yards and breaking a long touchdown run that accounted for New York's only offensive score. Hall's performance also pushed him past the 1,000-yard rushing mark for the season, the first Jets player to do so since 2015. Defensively, New England was stout, forcing turnovers and stifling the Jets' attack throughout the afternoon. The Jets' offensive struggles continued, extending a franchise record streak of games without an interception, and reflecting deeper issues on both sides of the ball for a team that finished 3-13. Meanwhile, the Patriots improved to 13-3 and strengthened their grip on the AFC East title, showcasing why they are among the AFC's elite as the postseason approaches. This one-sided affair highlighted just how far apart the two teams are at this point in the season. The Patriots looked every bit the powerhouse, dominating both offensively and defensively, while the Jets struggled to keep pace, illustrating a team that is several tiers below their AFC East rival. The loss underscores the long offseason ahead for New York, as the organization must address key roster needs, make critical signings, and use the draft strategically to rebuild the franchise. Questions loom over the coaching staff as well, with head coach Aaron Glenn facing potential job uncertainty with the team steps backwards in 2026. In a hard-fought Week 17 AFC South battle at Lucas Oil Stadium, the Jacksonville Jaguars survived a gritty 23-17 win over the Indianapolis Colts, keeping pace atop the division with their 7th straight victory. Jacksonville outgained Indianapolis 370 total yards to 204, fueled by a balanced offensive effort, and held a longer time of possession that helped control the game's tempo despite multiple miscues and red zone turnovers. The quarterback matchup featured Trevor Lawrence, who is not a rookie but it's hard to call him a veteran, for Jacksonville, and 44-year-old Phillip Rivers for the Colts, a rare storyline late in the season. Lawrence completed 23 of 37 passes for 263 yards and added 2 rushing touchdowns on 8 carries, showing his dual-threat capability even as his passing impact cooled later in the game. Rivers finished 17 of 30 for 147 yards, with 1 touchdown and 1 interception, relying on short completions and veteran savvy. But the Colts couldn't sustain enough drives to secure a late lead. The Jaguars' ground game complemented Lawrence's contributions, with Travis Etienne Jr. rushing 17 times for 76 yards and helping keep key drives alive. Wide receiver Parker Washington continued his breakout stretch with 8 receptions for 115 yards, giving Jacksonville a reliable big play target throughout the contest. Tight end Bretton Strange also chipped in with 54 receiving yards, spreading the field and forcing the Colts to defend multiple threats. For the Colts, Jonathan Taylor was a bright spot, rushing 21 times for 70 yards and scoring a touchdown, keeping Indianapolis in striking distance early on. Tight end Mo Alley-Cox hauled in a short touchdown pass from Rivers, giving the home team a brief lead in the third quarter. Despite their best efforts, Indianapolis' offense totaled only 204 yards, with just 135 through the air, and was unable to score in the fourth quarter as Jacksonville's defense tightened. Defensively, the Jaguars made key plays when it mattered most. Jacksonville notched 2 interceptions and 2 sacks, with a late Antonio Johnson interception in the end zone on a final Hail Mary attempt sealing the victory. Colts defenders like Nick Cross and Kenny Moore II contributed with tackles and pressure, but the Jaguars' opportunistic stops proved decisive. This win not only extended Jacksonville's streak to 7 games, but also kept the Jaguars within striking distance of the AFC South title. With a critical Week 18 matchup looming, Indianapolis, already eliminated from playoff contention, finished the season at 8-8 and will face off-season questions about consistency and closing out tight divisional games after a promising 7-1 start. While criticism of the Colts continues, the team keeps finding ways to win despite lingering doubts. With Week 18 looming, Indianapolis must defeat the Tennessee Titanism or the Texans to lose to Indianapolis and Houston, to secure the AFC South title and fend off the surging Houston Texans, leaving both fans and analysts watching closely as the season closes. In a back-and-forth Week 17 clash at Nissan Stadium, the New Orleans Saints rallied from an early deficit to defeat the Tennessee Titans 34-26, earning their fourth consecutive victory and closing the season on a high note. The Saints finished the day with 423 total yards of offense, compared to 336 for the Titans, and outpaced Tennessee for much of the second half, with sustained drives that ultimately turned the tide in their favor. New Orleans also managed to control key moments on defense, contributing to its comeback effort. This was a game that showcased a rookie quarterback duel between Tyler Shough and Cam Ward. Just 2 months ago, this matchup would have featured Spencer Rattler under center for New Orleans, but Shough has since taken over and led the Saints to 4 straight victories, including this comeback win. Saints rookie Tyler Shough, who delivered the best performance of his young career, completing 22 of 27 passes for 333 yards and 2 touchdowns without an interception. Shough's accuracy and big play capability were on display throughout the second half, as New Orleans outscored the Titans 24-6 after intermission. On the other side, Titans rookie Cam Ward was efficient in defeat, finishing 21 for 39 for 251 yards and 2 touchdowns, but was hindered at times by negative plays and a pivotal defensive score allowed. Tennessee jumped out to an early 13-0 lead, sparked by 2 Joey Sly field goals and a 43-yard touchdown pass from Ward to Chig Okonkwo. But the Saints clawed back before halftime with a 56-yard Charlie Smith field goal and gained momentum on a strip sack touchdown by defensive end Chase Young, who forced a fumble and returned it 33 yards for 6. New Orleans' offense came alive in the second half, with Shough connecting on several explosive plays, including long completions to Chris Olave, 119 yards and a score, and Juwan Johnson, 95 yards, and a late 32-yard touchdown run by Audric Estime that put the game out of reach. Rushing production was balanced but unspectacular. The Saints finished with 103 rushing yards, led by Estime's career-high 94 yards and a touchdown, while the Titans posted 108 rushing yards as a team. Defensively, New Orleans' pressure and timely stops in the second half were critical, as they held Tennessee to only field goals in the third and fourth quarters. With this win, Shough has cemented his role as the Saints' starter, and the rookie duel highlighted the potential and promise for both teams' young quarterbacks. Though the Titans fought hard, New Orleans' combination of clutch offense and opportunistic defense proved decisive. As the season closes, both franchises will reflect on their rookie quarterback performances and build toward the offseason with an eye on continued development. In one of the more decisive NFC contests of Week 17, the Seattle Seahawks cruised to a 27-10 victory over the Carolina Panthers, showcasing just how strong Seattle has become and underscoring the challenges facing Carolina as it heads into a critical finish to the season. Seattle dominated the statistical battle, finishing with 288 total yards compared to Carolina's 139, while controlling the ball for 34 minutes and 18 seconds to 25 minutes and 42 seconds. The Seahawks' physical approach on both sides of the ball set the tone early and allowed them to seize control in the second half. Seattle's offense was powered on the ground by Zach Charbonnet, who rushed 18 times for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Kenneth Walker III added 51 yards on 15 carries. Quarterback Sam Darnold chipped in with 3 carries for 2 yards and also threw for 147 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception, completing 18 of 27 passes, while taking 3 sacks for 22 yards. The Seahawks' receiving attack featured Jackson Smith-Njigba, who caught 9 passes for 72 yards, A.J. Barner with 3 receptions for 43 yards and a touchdown, and contributions from Rashid Shaheed, Cooper Kupp, Kenneth Walker III, and Eric Saubert, combining for 147 receiving yards on 26 targets. Seattle lost just 1 fumble among 3 total team fumbles. Carolina struggled to find offensive rhythm, with quarterback Bryce Young completing 14 of 24 passes for just 54 yards, 1 interception, and taking 2 sacks for 14 yards. The Panthers' rushing game was led by Rico Dowdle, who gained 59 yards on 12 carries, while Chuba Hubbard contributed 12 yards on 4 attempts and scored a rushing touchdown. Receiving production was limited, with Jalen Coker and Jimmy Horn Jr. combining for 4 catches and 25 yards, and the team totaled only 54 receiving yards on 21 targets. Carolina also lost 1 fumble on the day, further hampering their ability to sustain drives against a stout Seattle defense. Despite the loss, the Carolina Panthers still have a path to the NFC South title, particularly with Tampa Bay falling to the Dolphins in Miami. Carolina will need a win in Week 18 against the Buccaneers to clinch the division and secure a playoff spot, making next week's matchup a must-win for the franchise. While the Seahawks demonstrated their strength in this contest, the Panthers' season is far from over, and their final game will determine whether they can capitalize on the opportunities created by their rivals' setbacks. Looking ahead, the Seattle Seahawks face a critical Week 18 matchup against NFC West rival, the San Francisco 49ers. This game will not only settle the question of how the West was won, but also determine playoff seeding for both teams. With the NFC West crown and positioning on the line, Seattle will need to carry the momentum from their win over Carolina, while the 49ers will be fighting to assert control in one of the league's most competitive divisions. Let's head out to Cincinnati to Paycor Stadium, where the Cincinnati Bengals delivered a dominant 37-14 victory over the Arizona Cardinals, showcasing a balanced and efficient offensive performance while controlling the clock and the line of scrimmage. Cincinnati finished with 429 total net yards compared to 233 for Arizona, and the Bengals controlled the time of possession by a wide margin, holding the ball for 40 minutes and 56 seconds, while limiting the Cardinals to just 19 minutes and 4 seconds of possession. The Bengals' quarterback matchup proved decisive, as Joe Burrow completed 24 of 31 passes for 305 yards and 2 touchdown passes, maintaining efficiency and avoiding turnovers, before yielding to backup Joe Flacco late in the fourth quarter, who added 24 yards through the air. No Bengals receiver eclipsed 100 yards, but there were 11 Bengals receivers that caught at least one pass. Burrow's connection with his star receiver Jamar Chase was a focal point of the Cincinnati aerial attack, with Chase hauling in 7 receptions for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Bengals also featured a strong ground game, led by Chase Brown, who rushed 22 times for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Samaje Perine and Sony Michel chipped in additional yardage and a score on the ground. For the Cardinals, Jacoby Brissett started under center and completed 21 of 37 passes for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns, but the struggling Arizona offense couldn't sustain long drives, reflected in the time of possession deficit. Michael Wilson and tight end Trey McBride were the Cardinals' primary receiving threats. Wilson caught 5 passes for 89 yards and a score, and McBride hauled in 10 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown, even as he made NFL history that day by setting a single-season record for receptions by a tight end. Despite their efforts, Arizona managed only 42 rushing yards as a team, and couldn't keep pace with Cincinnati's multifaceted attack. Despite the absence of playoff stakes, the game featured exciting plays on both sides, with the Bengals' control of both the clock and total yardage proving decisive. The final score of 37-14 reflected Cincinnati's dominance on offense, as well as their ability to limit Arizona's opportunities in a fast-paced, high-effort matchup. For the Bengals, edge rusher Myles Murphy led the team defensively, totaling multiple tackles and adding a key sack as Cincinnati limited the Cardinals' offense throughout the contest. Cornerback Dax Hill also made an impact in coverage, helping to keep Arizona's passing game in check and contributing to pressure on the Cardinals' quarterback. The Bengals' defense overall held Arizona to just 233 total yards, forcing stops on multiple drives and contributing to Cincinnati's time of possession advantage. On the Cardinals' side, linebacker Cody Simon showed hustle, finishing with notable tackle numbers and recording half a sack while consistently being around the ball defensively. Simon's efforts were among the brighter moments for Arizona's defense in a challenging afternoon. With only 1 week remaining in the season, both the Bengals and Cardinals face a long off-season to address significant questions about team needs and overall direction. In this cat-and-bird matchup, the Bengals came away with the victory. But both franchises have areas requiring attention. For Cincinnati, questions remain about depth on defense, consistency at key skill positions, and sustaining offensive efficiency throughout the season. For Arizona, the Cardinals must evaluate the development of young talent, identify improvements needed in both the offensive and defensive lines, and assess their quarterback situation moving forward. While the final Week 17 results are set, the offseason will be critical for both teams as they seek to answer these strategic questions and prepare for the 2026 campaign. In one of the more talked-about games of Week 17, the New York Giants snapped a 9-game losing streak with a convincing 34-10 victory over the Las Vegas Raiders at Allegiant Stadium, a matchup that had taken on Tank Bowl overtones due to both teams' struggles this season. Despite having no playoff implications, this matchup drew significant attention due to the unique circumstances surrounding both teams. The Giants were trying to snap a 9-game losing streak, while the Raiders faced the prospect of extending their own skid to 10 games, making the contest a must-watch for fans following each team's struggles. The game also carried draft implications, as both franchises were near the bottom of the standings, and a loss could influence the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. Adding to the intrigue, standout individual performances, including Wan'Dale Robinson surpassing 1,000 receiving yards, and Deonte Banks' 95-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, kept viewers engaged, while injuries and missing players for Las Vegas added another layer of drama. Media outlets even dubbed it a tank bowl, highlighting the irony of two teams competing intensely while simultaneously considering the benefits of a loss. From the opening kickoff, the Giants looked the more motivated and cohesive unit, outgaining the Raiders 343 total yards to 231, generating more first downs, and controlling the flow with 30 minutes and 48 seconds of possession to Las Vegas's 29 minutes and 12 seconds. New York also dominated the turnover battle with 2 interceptions and took advantage of field position throughout the afternoon. Quarterback Jackson Dart was at the center of the Giants' resurgence, completing 22 of 30 passes for 207 yards and adding a dynamic element with his legs, rushing 9 times for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns, as New York consistently found the end zone. The ground game complemented the passing attack, and running back Devin Singletary opened the scoring with a 1-yard rushing touchdown in the first quarter. As mentioned already, wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson continued his breakout season with 11 catches for 113 yards, surpassing the 1,000-yard receiving mark and providing a reliable target all day. The special teams unit also made a splash when Deonte Banks electrified the crowd with a 95-yard kickoff return for a touchdown in the third quarter, effectively putting the game out of reach. For the Raiders, quarterback Geno Smith passed for 176 yards with 1 touchdown, but was plagued by 2 interceptions and left the game late with an ankle injury, leaving questions about his availability moving forward. Las Vegas, which watched key players such as Max Crosby and Brock Bowers miss the game due to injury or roster moves, must now regroup as its 10-game losing streak continues, and the franchise positions itself for the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. If they lose again in Week 18, that top selection will be virtually guaranteed. This decisive victory not only snapped the Giants' skid, but also kept them out of position for the first pick, complicating what was already a dramatic draft landscape. Perhaps the most anticipated matchup of the weekend featured the reigning Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, traveling to Orchard Park, New York, to take on the Buffalo Bills. Both teams came in with playoff positioning on the line, and the clash promised a high-stakes battle between 2 of the league's elite squads. Fans and analysts alike were eager to see how Philadelphia's balanced, championship-caliber offense would fare against Buffalo's physical defense, while quarterback matchups and explosive playmakers on both sides added to the excitement surrounding the contest. This game had much of the drama you'd expect from 2 teams of this caliber in late December in New York, but it was a low-scoring defensive battle that provided drama right down to the final play. In a game that came down to inches, the Eagles narrowly held on for a 13-12 victory, improving their record to 11-5 and keeping valuable momentum heading into Week 18. The Bills also fell to 11-5, dropping the AFC East title to the New England Patriots while securing a wildcard spot in the postseason. Philadelphia struck first and built a 13-0 lead by halftime, capped by Jalen Hurts' 1-yard touchdown pass to Dallas Goedert and 2 Jake Elliott field goals. Goedert's touchdown was his 11th of the season, setting a new franchise record for receiving touchdowns by a tight end, while A.J. Brown surpassed 1,000 receiving yards yet again, highlighting his consistent impact in the Eagles' offense. The Bills battled back in the second half, finally putting points on the board with 2 Josh Allen rushing touchdowns in the fourth quarter to make it a 1-point game. Allen, who finished with 262 passing yards and 2 rushing scores, led a late surge, but his final pass on a 2-point conversion attempt with 5 seconds left fell incomplete, sealing the Eagles' victory. While quarterbacks have incompletions, Allen missed an open target on a play that makes most fans shake their heads and wonder, why? Why did Sean McDermott decide to go for 2 points when an extra point would have tied the game? Did the earlier block field goal by Philadelphia influence his decision? The throw from Allen was probably the easiest of his career, which makes you wonder if his foot is still injured and how much is it bothering him. While the Eagles earned the victory, the game felt more like a contest Buffalo lost rather than Philadelphia won. The Bills struggled with critical execution in key moments, including missed scoring opportunities and a failed 2-point conversion on the final play. Turnovers and penalties at inopportune times stifled Buffalo's momentum, and their late surge fell just short. In contrast, Philadelphia's early scoring and timely defensive plays gave them a lead they didn't fully dominate, but were able to protect, underscoring how Buffalo's miscues ultimately decided the outcome. Defensively, Philadelphia was stout for much of the contest, sacking Josh Allen 5 times and creating a key turnover when Jalen Phillips forced a fumble recovered by Jahad Campbell. The Eagles' defensive line consistently disrupted Buffalo's rhythm, and a stop on the final conversion attempt preserved the narrow lead in dramatic fashion. Offensively, the Eagles struggled after halftime. The team produced just 17 total yards and 1 first down on 5 second-half possessions after intermission, showcasing how hard Buffalo's defense played. Hurts finished 13 of 27 for 110 yards, with most of his production coming early in the game. Meanwhile, the Bills amassed more yards overall, but couldn't convert enough opportunities into points to overcome Philadelphia's early advantage. The rain-soaked, defensive-oriented contest illustrated the resiliency of both teams. But the Eagles' ability to build an early lead and make key defensive plays proved decisive. With this win, Philadelphia keeps pressure on NFC seeding ahead of the playoffs, while Buffalo's loss shifts its postseason path and ends its 5-year run atop the AFC East. In a thrilling Week 17 Sunday Night Football showdown at Levi's Stadium, the San Francisco 49ers edged the Chicago Bears 42-38 in one of the most exciting and high-scoring games of the 2025 NFL season. Both teams entered the contest with identical 11-4 records and heavy playoff implications, but it was San Francisco who found a way to prevail in a back-and-forth battle that featured multiple lead changes and big plays on both sides of the ball. With the victory, San Francisco now sits in the driver's seat for the #1 seed in the NFC, and an opportunity to play at home all the way through the playoffs. All that remains is to beat Seattle next week, which is no easy task, as Seattle is also competing for a high playoff spot. This showdown will take place next Saturday night in Week 18. The game got off to a dramatic start when Bears linebacker T.J. Edwards returned a tipped pass 34 yards for a touchdown on the first play from scrimmage, giving Chicago an early spark. This would be Purdy's only flaw of the night. However, the 49ers responded quickly, with tight end Jake Tonjes scoring on a 1-yard touchdown catch, and quarterback Brock Purdy adding a rushing score, tying the game in the opening quarter. San Francisco's offense was in rare form, amassing a season-high 496 total yards and rolling up points in bunches. Purdy was the catalyst, delivering a brilliant performance with over 300 passing yards and 5 total touchdowns, including the game-winning touchdown late in the fourth quarter to wide receiver Jawan Jennings. Running back Christian McCaffrey was equally impressive, rushing for 140 yards and catching passes out of the backfield, continuing his historic season as one of the league's most versatile offensive weapons. Despite the loss, the Bears showcased resilience and offensive firepower, led by second-year quarterback Caleb Williams, who threw for 330 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rookie receivers Luther Burden III and Colston Loveland provided a big lift in Chicago's passing game, combining for more than 230 receiving yards and 2 scores. The Bears also displayed a balanced attack on the ground, with DeAndre Swift contributing multiple rushing touchdowns. The game's final moments brought dramatic tension as Chicago mounted a late drive into San Francisco territory, but the Bears' final pass in the end zone fell incomplete as time expired. The result ended Chicago's bid for the #1 seed in the NFC, while keeping the 49ers' hopes alive heading into the regular season finale. When looking at the stat book, it tells the take why this game was so high scoring, as both teams combined for a staggering 936 total yards of offense. The 49ers finished with 496 total yards, including 200 rushing yards and 296 passing yards, while the Bears amassed 440 yards of offense, with 110 rushing yards and 330 passing yards in the high-scoring affair. San Francisco controlled the clock moderately, finishing with a slightly larger share of time of possession as the offense kept drives alive with balanced play calling, though precise possession splits weren't officially published in the box score. Offensively for the 49ers, Brock Purdy was brilliant, completing 24 of 33 passes for 303 yards, throwing 3 passing touchdowns and adding 2 rushing touchdowns, while also accounting for 28 yards on the ground. He was the engine of a prolific attack that rarely let up. Running back Christian McCaffrey starred once again, rushing 23 times for 140 yards and a touchdown, while also catching passes out of the backfield, totaling over 180 scrimmage yards, and continuing his MVP caliber season. Wide receiver Ricky Pearsall made a key impact with 85 receiving yards and several crucial catches that helped sustain drives. For the Bears, Caleb Williams delivered a stellar performance, completing 25 of 42 passes for 330 yards and 2 touchdowns without throwing an interception, keeping Chicago in contention until the final possession. Rookie receivers Luther Burden III, 8 receptions for 138 yards and a touchdown, and Colston Loveland, 6 catches for 94 yards and a touchdown, were Williams' primary targets in a potent passing attack. On the ground, DeAndre Swift contributed 2 rushing touchdowns, finishing with solid yardage that helped keep the Bears competitive. Chicago also struck early on defense when T.J. Edwards returned an interception 34 yards for a touchdown on the game's first play, giving them an early lead. Though the Bears had multiple opportunities late and drove inside the 5-yard line on the final drive, an incomplete end zone pass on the game's closing play sealed San Francisco's victory. The result preserved a thrilling offensive showcase highlighted by explosive individual efforts and nearly 1,000 yards of total offense between these two NFC playoff contenders. This could be a matchup we see later in January, whether in the frozen temperatures of Chicago or the sunshine of Santa Clara, California. Surprisingly, home field has yet to be decided, but Week 18 will determine it all. Under the bright lights of Monday Night Football, the Atlanta Falcons and Los Angeles Rams clashed in a matchup that carries very different motivations for each team. With a national audience watching, the Rams arrive in Atlanta looking to strengthen their playoff position and sharpen their form heading into January, while the Falcons take the field determined to play spoiler and close out their home schedule with a statement performance. Los Angeles enters the night as one of the NFC's most dangerous teams, led by veteran quarterback Matthew Stafford and an offense capable of striking quickly through the air. With postseason seeding on the line, every snap matters for a Rams team that has relied on experience, balance, and timely defensive plays throughout the season. A strong showing on the road would reinforce their status as a serious playoff contender. For Atlanta, the focus is pride, progress, and momentum. Though the Falcons are out of playoff contention, they have emphasized finishing the season the right way, leaning on a physical rushing attack and an aggressive defense. Young stars and emerging playmakers have a chance to shine on a big stage, and a primetime upset would offer a glimpse of what the future could hold. Coming into the game, the Rams at 11-4 have clinched a playoff spot and are playing for seeding, while the Falcons at 6-9 are already out of playoff contention but playing spoiler at home. While Atlanta has long been out of the playoff push, the implications of this game extend beyond the Falcons themselves. In an unexpected twist, Tampa Bay's playoff hopes hinge in part on the outcome of this matchup, with the Buccaneers needing a Rams victory to improve their own postseason chances. What may appear on the surface to be a non-factor game for Atlanta instead carries meaningful weight across the NFC playoff picture, adding an extra layer of intrigue to Monday night's contest. Coming into the season, Atlanta carried high expectations, fueled by a strong finish the year before that suggested the team was ready to take the next step. There was optimism around a developing core, confidence in the coaching staff, and belief that the Falcons could compete for the division. Instead, those expectations gradually turned into disappointment as inconsistency, missed opportunities, and uneven performances defined much of the season. Close losses and unrealized potential left Atlanta short of its goals, making the year feel like a step back rather than the leap forward many anticipated. The first half of the game illustrated why the expectations were so high for this young Falcons team, who have a lot of talent on all sides of the ball. At halftime of Monday Night Football, the Falcons lead the Rams 21-0 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Atlanta controlled the first half behind a strong ground game and opportunistic defense, totaling 211 yards and committing no turnovers, while holding the Rams to just 113 total yards. Bijan Robinson was the standout, rushing for 125 yards and a touchdown on 11 carries and adding a receiving touchdown, consistently gashing the Rams' defense. Kirk Cousins played efficiently, throwing for 68 yards and a touchdown. Defensively, the Falcons capitalized on mistakes, highlighted by Jesse Bates' 34-yard interception return for a touchdown. For Los Angeles, Matthew Stafford struggled, throwing 2 interceptions and finishing the half with 96 passing yards, as the Rams failed to generate momentum on offense. The Falcons opened the scoring with a quick strike, as Kirk Cousins connected with Bijan Robinson on a 4-yard touchdown pass. Atlanta's offense looked sharp early, mixing short passes and effective run blocking to carve up the Rams' defense, giving them an early 7-0 lead. Atlanta extended its lead in a surprising fashion when Jesse Bates III intercepted Matthew Stafford and returned it 34 yards for a touchdown. The pick six highlighted the Rams' struggles to protect the football, and the Falcons capitalized on the turnover to make it 14-0. Bijan Robinson electrified the crowd with a 93-yard touchdown run, showcasing his speed and vision. The run was a crushing blow for the Rams, putting Atlanta ahead 21-0 and forcing Los Angeles to dig deep for a comeback. The Rams finally got on the board with a 35-yard field goal by Harrison Mevis in the third quarter. It was a momentum-shifting moment, signaling the start of Los Angeles' second-half rally, and cutting the Falcons' lead to 21-3. Just when the Rams were looking for a little momentum after their first score, Zane Gonzalez connects from 56 yards to extend the Falcons' lead to 24-3. Matthew Stafford threw a 27-yard touchdown pass to Terrence Ferguson, energizing the Rams and their fans. The completion showcased Stafford's poise under pressure and trimmed Atlanta's lead to 21-10, keeping the comeback alive. A game-changing special teams play occurred when the Rams blocked a Falcons field goal, and Jared Verse returned it 76 yards for a touchdown. The spectacular defensive play brought the Rams closer at 24-17 and swung momentum completely in Los Angeles' favor. Late in the fourth quarter, Stafford found Puka Nacua for an 11-yard touchdown, completing the comeback and tying the game at 24-24. The drive demonstrated the Rams' resilience and balanced attack, with effective runs and key passes setting up the tying score. Atlanta's possession saw a mixture of runs between Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson, and with 21 seconds left, Zane Gonzalez hit a 51-yard field goal to go ahead 27-24. On Los Angeles' next possession, their last, Stafford missed a wide-open receiver Xavier Smith running down the field. On the next play, Tutu Atwell drops a pass, but on that pass interference was committed by D. Alford, but the referees missed the call. Third down, an incomplete pass to Puka Nacua, and on fourth down, another incomplete pass to end the game. What a game this turned out to be, and one more example of how talented the Falcons are, but also how explosive the Rams are. Atlanta controlled the game on the ground, while Los Angeles relied heavily on Matthew Stafford's arm. Stafford completed 22 of 38 passes for 269 yards and 2 touchdowns, but his performance was undermined by 3 interceptions and consistent pressure, as he was sacked 3 times and struggled to protect the football in key moments. Despite spreading the ball effectively to Puka Nacua, Terrence Ferguson, Xavier Smith, and Kyren Williams, the Rams' passing attack lacked consistency when it mattered most. The ground game provided some balance, as Kyren Williams rushed for 92 yards on 13 carries, helping Los Angeles average 5.8 yards per rush, but the Rams were unable to sustain drives or capitalize in critical situations. Atlanta, meanwhile, leaned into a dominant rushing attack that set the tone from the opening kickoff. Bijan Robinson was the engine of the offense, carrying the ball 22 times for 195 yards and a touchdown, highlighted by a 93-yard explosive run that flipped field position and momentum. The Falcons finished with 219 rushing yards and consistently won at the line of scrimmage, allowing quarterback Kirk Cousins to play an efficient, mistake-free game. Cousins completed 13 of 20 passes for 126 yards and a touchdown, avoiding sacks and turnovers while converting key third downs through short, controlled throws. Robinson also made his presence felt in the passing game, catching 5 passes for 34 yards and a score, while David Sills V and Darnell Mooney provided timely contributions. By controlling the tempo, winning the ground battle, and protecting the football, Atlanta executed a clean, physical game plan that proved decisive. Statistically, the game was tightly contested, with both teams finishing nearly even in first downs and time of possession, but the difference came down to ball security and situational execution. Los Angeles recorded 16 first downs to Atlanta's 15, including a slight edge through the air, while both teams matched each other on third down at 5 for 13. The Rams ran 61 offensive plays for 363 total yards, compared to 345 yards on 53 plays for the Falcons, but Atlanta's ability to generate explosive gains, averaging 6.5 yards per play, offset Los Angeles' higher play volume. The Rams leaned heavily on the passing game, throwing for 248 yards, but 3 interceptions and 3 sacks stalled drives and flipped field position. Atlanta, meanwhile, dominated on the ground with 219 rushing yards on 33 carries, averaging 6.6 yards per attempt, which allowed them to control tempo and avoid negative plays. Red zone efficiency was limited on both sides, with each team scoring just once inside the 20. But the turnover margin proved decisive, as Atlanta finished +3 with no giveaways. Both teams produced a defensive or special teams touchdown, and possession time was nearly split at just over 30 minutes apiece, underscoring how a handful of mistakes and Atlanta's ground control ultimately shaped the outcome. Week 17 of the 2025 NFL season delivered exactly what fans crave: high-stakes drama, pivotal divisional matchups, and performances that are shaping the playoff picture as the regular season nears its conclusion. With only 1 week left before the postseason, every play, third down conversion, and red zone opportunity carries enormous weight. Divisional races are tightening, wildcard berths remain up for grabs, and the margin for error is razor thin. This is the stage where contenders prove themselves, pretenders falter, and the NFL showcases its most intense, edge-of-your-seat football of the year. Nearly every game this week carried major implications, creating suspense from kickoff to final whistle. Dramatic comebacks and late rallies highlighted resilience, momentum swings, and clutch execution under pressure. Individual stars shined as quarterbacks threw precise passes, running backs powered through defenses, and receivers made jaw-dropping catches that changed games in an instant. Tactical battles were equally compelling, with clock management, field position strategy, and defensive adjustments playing decisive roles. Week 17 also delivered surprises. Favorites fell, underdogs thrived, and playoff scenarios shifted with every turnover, sack, and fourth down conversion. From pressure-packed fourth-quarter drives to game-saving sacks and interceptions, every snap mattered. Teams battled not just for points, but for field position, clock control, and playoff positioning, emphasizing the strategic chess match that makes late-season football so compelling. Week 17 was packed with high-stakes action, pivotal divisional matchups, and dramatic moments that are shaping the playoff picture. Teams battled for playoff positioning, wild-card spots, and division titles, with close games, late comebacks, and standout individual performances keeping fans on the edge of their seats. Surprises, momentum swings, and tactical battles highlighted the intensity, proving why the final weeks of the regular season are always must-watch football. Surprise outcomes have been a defining feature of the 2025 NFL season, and Week 17 delivered its share of upsets and dramatic finishes. From Christmas night to Saturday and Sunday showdowns, and culminating under the bright lights of Monday Night Football, several high-stakes contests kept fans on the edge of their seats and reshaped the playoff picture heading into the final week of the regular season. From all of us here at Diggin, deeper into the NFL, thank you for joining the broadcast. I'm Brian Parsons, wishing you the best as the season races toward its thrilling conclusion. Stay safe, enjoy the games ahead, and God bless.